had something I was going to talk about, unless you guys
No, go ahead.
have anything. So there's this philosophy. It's called amor fati. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Um, I'm going to bring up a picture here. So here it is here. Yeah, can you see this?
Yep.
So it says amor fati means love of fate. It's a Latin phrase that may be translated as love of fate or love of one's fate. It's used to describe an attitude in which one sees everything that happens in one's life, including suffering and loss, as good or at the very least necessary, right? And then it quotes Nietzsche here saying, my formula for greatness is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward or backward, not in all eternity, right? So, so that's what I was going to talk about today, and I'll share this picture here. You see this picture?
Oh yeah. See.
So this is like, okay, you know, you're going this way, you make a choice, right? So you can go to the left, and then you're at another junction, and you decide to go left or right. So let's say you go left, and then that takes you to another node. And each time you make a choice, then there's another option that opens up, right?
Yep.
So
Mhm.
it's kind of like flipping a coin. Here's another picture that I've used before. We've talked about this before. This one here, right? You might recognize this one. So you make a choice. Those little green circles are choice points, and then you can choose the path. That's the purple one, and the red path is the one that you didn't choose, right? Or the one that didn't happen, let's say. So, so the point is that you're always somewhere, and you always have a choice. You always have an option, right? Like you can flip a coin, left or right, you know, a heads or tails, right? So the reason that I was going to talk about this is because last week Greg and I were talking about getting angry if things don't work out. You remember, Greg?
Yep. I remember.
So you're on the phone with somebody, you're trying to make a sale, you know, you're all primed to make this big sale, and the person says no. So the sale goes away, your commission goes away, you get upset, you head for the fridge, you know,
Right.
to give yourself a shot of sugar instead of dopamine, which you would have had if you made the sale, right? So how does amor fati fit in here? Well, think about Phil Mickelson. I've talked about him before. He's a guy that wants to, you know, his goal was to win the U.S. Open golf tournament. He never won. He came second 6 times. So when he was a kid, the same as all of us, he would probably be playing golf with his buddies, and he'd pretend, you know, here I am on the 18th green. If I make this putt, I win the U.S. Open. You know, he makes the
Mm-hmm.
putt, ta-da! I won the U.S. Open, right? But of course, you might not make the putt. That's the thing. You can't guarantee that the putt's going to go in. The same as you can't guarantee that if you flip a coin, it's going to be heads. Or you can't guarantee that when the person says to you, you know, when you ask the person, okay, you're ready to sign this document here and get this mortgage, the person can say no, right?
Right.
So there's always that element of luck or fate, you know, that you can't
Right.
control. So so how does this work? Well, how does this help you, right? Well, if you think of Phil Mickelson, his goal was to win the U.S. Open, to have a putt on the 18th green, let's say, where he could, if he sank the putt, he won the U.S. Open. Now, he may have been in that position. I'm not sure. I don't know all the ins and outs of the 6 tournaments that he came second in. But you can imagine when you're trying to close the deal, it's the same idea, right?
Right.
So you think, and this is how we think, all of us think this way. I want to make X number of dollars every year. I want to have so many sales, and here I've gone through this whole process with this person. He's a prospect, and I've laid out the whole thing for him. And all he has to do is say yes, and boom, I'm right on track,
Right.
But of course you can't control him, and he says no. So you go, you get frustrated or, whatever. So where are you? In other words, if you're flipping a coin and you say, okay, heads I win, tails I lose, and you flip a head, you say, that's what I want, right? That's what I want. I want the head. I want the putt to go in. I want the sail to go through, right?
Right.
But why do you get angry? Well, you get angry because you realize, hey, it's not a head, it's a tail. I'm at the place I didn't want to be at. I wanted to be at the head. Now I'm at the tail. That's bad. I'm pissed off,
Right.
Whatever, right? Well, Amor Fati says you're looking at it wrong. You don't want to be at the head or at the tail. You want to be in the position where you can flip the coin. In other words, you want to be in a position on the 18th green where you have a putt to win. Of course, you want the putt to go in, right? That's what you want.
Right.
But if you miss the putt, you're going to be upset. I didn't win. But the reason you get upset is because it's like, hey, wait a second. I wanted to be in the position of the winner, and here I am in the position of the loser. That's not what I wanted. That's why I'm upset. But Amor Fati says, okay, you can't control your fate. Sometimes it goes in, sometimes it doesn't go in. Sometimes it's a head, sometimes it's a tail. So you believing, and when I say you, I mean, the sort of universal you, because this applies to me too. It applies to all of us. The position you want to be in is you want to be in the position where it's possible that you're going to get a head versus a tail. Or you're in the position where it's possible that if you sink this putt, you could win the US Open. Right?
Right.
And you're still in that position. No, you're not in that position in this tournament because if you missed the putt, then you lost the tournament. You got to wait a year, But basically what I'm saying is if you shift back a bit and say, okay, what's the position I want to be in? Well, the position I want to be in is I want to be in a position where if I'm Phil Mickelson, I have a putt that if I make it, I win the US Open. That's the position I want to be in. That's the position I'm in right now. I try the putt, doesn't go in. I'm going to be upset temporarily, but I realize, hey, I'm still in the same position. In other words, I'm a professional golfer who's in the PGA who has a chance to win the US Open next year. I'm still in the same position.
Right.
So that's the thing. So like if you think to yourself, okay, the position I want to be in as a business person, as a salesperson, I want to be in the position where I'm dealing with these prospects, I'm making presentations, I'm giving people the option to say yes or no. I'm doing the best I can to try and explain my situation and explain how it's beneficial for them to choose me. But if they say no, it's disappointing, but I'm still in the same position. I got another prospect. I got somebody else I can call. I can go through it again. Like Phil Mickelson, there's another tournament next week,
Right.
So the way I understand it, that's this idea of Amor Fati, right? It's like whatever happens in your life, you go, I'm exactly where I want to be. I'm in the position that I have an opportunity to make X number of dollars this year, or I'm in a position where my goal is possible to reach.
Yep.
But you can't you can't control what happens because there's always that element of fate, So that's the idea, is that you try and catch yourself as quickly as you can and not get upset. Of course, you're always going to be upset because you lose, but as quickly as you can, you want to say, okay, well, I'm still in the same position. I'm still sitting here in my office. I still have prospects. I still have presentations to make, or like a golfer, I'm still in the position where I can win next week.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in the real life, it happens very fast and or it happens in a different way. It's not as so simple. I think about the sales situation and I
Well, wait a
think,
second. It happens. How fast does it happen? It happens at the speed of thought.
yeah,
So like they say, we have 50,000 thoughts a day. That's, one every second, roughly. So, you're sitting there, you say, okay, yes or no, you want to sign this? And you're hoping the person's going to say yes. But if he says no, you go, darn, But okay, that's fine. You did a good job. You did everything you could do. You took your best shot, kind of a thing.
right.
So the idea.
Well, what if
the
he says
idea-
yes? What if he says yes from a practical standpoint?
Oh, well, if he
And
says
then,
yes, then you go, great, I won.
well, and then you do a bunch of work, and then one in every three or one in every five people, after doing a lot of work, then they say, "Oh, by the way, I reconsidered. I'm not interested."
Yeah, that's right. So then again, you can't control your fate, right?
Right.
So the idea then with the amor fati, as I understand it, is you do what you can do. You have your goal, you have your plan, you're taking your action steps, right? And you hope it's going to work out, and you do everything you can to make it work out. And of course, if you keep trying, eventually it will work out, but not just in this particular case.
Well, and I guess there's a couple parts to that, and you bring up a good model here. I think one, you're going to get some of those things if you sell, for example, and you do sell, and say talk to 100 people and three say yes. Okay, three say yes, and one of those three regularly, or one in six or something like that, comes back and recants. They say, I decided that's not for me. And it may be part of your process to find out, to make sure that yes really is the appropriate action for each of them. But you've got to factor in that you're going to have some disappointment even after having success, right?
Of course.
And so
yeah,
you
of
can,
course. So you're always going to feel bad when you don't win. I mean, that's true for any athlete, any professional sports person, and it should be that way for all of us. But of course, it's not that way for all of us because some of us don't understand that this is the way life works, in a sense, right? And so something goes south, and so we quit, we badmouth the other person, we quit the job, we say, I'm never going to make it, whatever, and our whole life sort of takes a different track from then on. So the purpose of amor fati idea is like love of fate, so you still feel great no matter what happens, because
well, that's what you're saying, that we still feel bad when it happens. I mean, when the guy misses the putt, don't we all look at the guy and see what his face does? And we may see initial reaction, but if he handles it badly, it's a bad sport. We all become, disappointed in that person, right?
oh yeah,
We
I
say,
mean,
oh, he was a jerk about it, right? He threw his club and
ruin the green, right? He sort of goes,
right.
shakes the other guy's hand and says,
Yeah, flip,
See you next.
whatever. He reacts badly, right? Then we become disappointed in that. And the same thing even for ourselves, if it happens where we internalize it and we become sick to our stomach, for example, we become
Well, that's the
ill.
thing. You see, we don't do that. What
Yeah.
we do is we accept the situation and we go, that's disappointing, but no problem.
Well, one of the things that I do,
I'm still in the same position. I still have the same opportunities today as I had yesterday.
well, I write down the problem. I said that I categorize them over time. So I say, okay, of the last people that said yes, that said no, what were the reasons they said no? So in a sales situation, you have a planning strategy. You go back and say, hey, maybe you should ask the question beforehand. Say, do you have the money? He says, oh, I don't have any money.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? He says, oh, yeah, I'm saying yes, but I have.
You refine your process.
Right. He said, I don't have enough money for it. Okay, well, then yes wasn't yes because you didn't have the ability to do it, right? And so, but those are selling situations which I'm more comfortable with,
Mhm.
where the interpersonal ones happen similarly, right? In that people have different expectations of a conversation, or, they don't want to do something and you want them to do something, for example, and say, hey, we're not going to decorate this year. Or we're not going to put up the tree. The other one says, well, I'm putting up the tree. I want to put up the tree. So you go through and, that can be volatile or emotional, just as much as missing that putt on a regular basis. So it's a lifestyle issue that I was noticing in myself, that my reaction is to go and hold on to that negative feeling a little too long, right? I'm saying, hey, I'm noticing that I'm getting, galled about this.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying, how can I see this a different way?
Yeah, well,
Um,
here's a different way. That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
So
well,
this is
I
a
think
way
that's
that you
very
can
good.
hopefully, we can hopefully overcome our disappointment and go, okay, I'm going to accept it. This is what happened, and that's fine. You know.
Well, if you can't move forward, right? Because if you're not willing to have a certain amount of rejection, you're just going to sit still,
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
you know?
in advance, like you said, one third of the deals, even the deals that I close, one third of them are going to renege on the deal later on. So you can
Yeah.
factor that in, and say, okay, well, only two out of three are actually wins. One of them
Well, and
like a
the
pseudo win or a virtual.
well, I mean, for me, I pull through on my deals. I pull through 85% of my deals, so
Yeah,
that I try to do, and so I qualify them first. But so that's an acceptable ratio. Now, there's things you could do to improve that. You can have further checklists and start looking at the 15% that don't. We try to be anticipatory of
yeah,
that and get that down. If you do too much, then you're turning down deals maybe you could do. You're being too selective. But
yeah, and
so ratio,
you can also work with a different prospect group too.
right,
Different
yep.
prospect. Naomi, what do you think about that idea? That it's basically the idea that whatever happens, you just accept it and you move
Yeah,
on.
we're in the midst right now of the National Finals Rodeo, which you have Canada, the best, the best of the rodeo world. Again, from Canada, from US, Australia, I think a few from Brazil. And boy, you see disappointment, but you see some really classy people too, how they handle it in front of the world, in front of TV. And it's the same scenario as your golf scenario. And it's yeah, you flip another coin. What's the next step? There was a there's also an adage in or like a little story within I think the Old Testament, and it's the only place where animals actually or they recorded that animals talk. Well, this guy was riding a donkey and the donkey would stop and he just beat the donkey and beat the donkey and then the donkey said, "Why are you beating me? There's the angel of death is right ahead of me and I just saved your life."
Mm.
And so the moral of that story is don't kick the donkey. And it just bad things are going to happen. You need to have a destination, and in destination that's all you can think about, and that's what you're visualizing it and everything, and things change. Well, then you've got to have the ability to rethink or reanalyze, just like what you were doing, Greg, and all your sales analysis, just a continuous improvement. So
Mm.
yeah, it all fits together, I believe.
Yeah, so it's a way of, looking at life that hopefully allows you to accept disappointment and continue to have faith and keep on keeping on, rather than
Hmm.
feeling like you're being victimized or, whatever it might be, right? I
Well,
mean,
it's a weird thing. You have to fail forward. I mean, you have to fail. And
yeah,
that's
Yes, right.
that's the hard part is the process cannot skip the failure. I was thinking, Naomi, you're a statistical analyst, analyst from your background, from what I understand. I was looking at it.
Yep.
I took stat in college, and I love that class because you could look at that decision tree that Anthony was pointing up there, with the little cluster, and you could put statistical analysis. If you smoke or don't smoke, 50, what's the likelihood
Yeah.
you're going to become ill, right? Then you say after that, if you drink after you smoke, there's drinking for each of those. So you say you want to drink and smoke, and you want to be overweight, you go down that tree and you could put stats from the National Institute of Health next to each of them, and you could have percentages and you could have likelihood of ill, pick your tree, and if you pick the wrong tree where you do them all, you probably have a mortality rate to die 20 years earlier and maybe an 80% confidence that's going to happen to you, right? And so, I mean, I don't have the tool to do that, but I think that way, as I'm trying to look at some of these future me's and say, well, if you do this and this and this, you're going to have a bad outcome, right? So, can you change your underlying feelings to make a better choice? Because we take the choice because it may be short-term gain. You soothe yourself or calm your nerves by having that smoke. Well, that over thousands of times is going to lead to an issue, right? And I think we all have coping mechanisms, but you have to put yourself under stress to go forward. I mean, you can sit in your room alone and you will have no stress. You'll do nothing, but you got to
Yeah.
put yourself there.
In that train movie that I showed you there, Bruno takes a train, right? What I mentioned in there, he's talking to the elder, right? The wise old guy. And he says, "How did I get on this train? How did I get to be on this train? And why am I on this train?" And the guy says, "Well, you decided to be on this train." And he says, "Well, I don't remember deciding to be on this train." The guy says, "Well, you did, And so that's the other part of it, right? It's like, and that's the part of the process that we're involved in here. This process of waking up, Buddha means wake, right? So bodhisattva is a person who's waking up. So that's why I said, what do you do one day if you wake up and you suddenly realize, oops, I'm here. How did I get here? What's going on? Where am I going? Well, the answer is you decided to be here. And if you want to go somewhere else, you need to decide to go somewhere else. It isn't luck, totally. I mean, people say, oh, it's just luck, it's a gamble. Like I had that roulette wheel in there for a second. People say, well, because if you talk to people, and of course we all talk to people, some people that's their philosophy of life, is that you're unlucky, or life's not going to work, or you can't win. So the idea then is to shift that around, to not decide to believe that, right? To decide to believe something else.
I was watching an interview with Jeff Bezos on Facebook or on YouTube yesterday, and he was interviewing, and he was saying that he started Amazon, and it took him 11 years to make a profit. Okay, and he was lambasted, and people interviewed him, and they were teasing him, and he said, "How do you spell profit?" And he said, "Prophet." And he said he had to be a prophet, and so he finally, now he's one of the richest men in the world. He started Blue Origin, for example, which is talking about Blue Origin's actually talking about space stations that float above the Earth that are eco-friendly, and he's looking at mining on the moon, for example, because of the low weight density that you can get rocket-propelled materials and fuel so that you can quickly and easily send fuel. He said, let's get the garbage off the Earth. So he wants to, if you're going to go do, like, for example, mining for petroleum, do it there. Don't do it here. Okay, so if you're going to be getting minerals, do it there. Don't mine there on that planet. And so it's kind of a crazy thing, but he has made these decisions throughout his life to be there. And I was watching Elon Musk, who also has made some of the same decisions. There's no coincidence in my mind that, for example, they're both into AI, into decision making, because decisions that you make determine the life that you have.
Yeah.
And so these guys were so smart, they figured this out 30 years ago and started doing it. So when you talk about efficacy of making better choices, I mean, there's nothing more evident than the two of the richest guys in the world, and Warren Buffett. Look at these guys; they are making good decisions, as are the people that are golfing pros or rodeo pros. And so the question is, and that's when I started 3 years. People are like, why am I still? I sometimes like, why am I still here? I'm here because 3 years ago we started talking about how are you making decisions. And you showed that graph that said, look at the future you. I'd done goal planning, but I was like, sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't, and, I didn't realize the importance of it. I was waiting for my ship to come in. When will somebody come by in my family that wins the lotto and bail me out?
Yeah,
You know, I go to the gas station, I see guys buying those scratchers and there's, put down $30. And I'm sure they're there every other day and they're scratching with the quarter. And I'm saying, my God, this guy's got an addiction that's bankrupting his family. And
yeah,
he's relying on that. And
exactly. Well, I think about my friend who passed away, at 72. I mean, I'm 77 now, and I when I learned how to quit smoking, I talked to this guy and said, I'll teach you how to quit smoking if you want to stop smoking. He said, well, you got to die sometime. Well, he died sometime. And I'm
yeah,
sure if he had the choice now, if he could go back in time or whatever, he would say, "Hey, man, if I could go back to the time when I was 35 and you suggested that you could show me how to quit smoking, I'm interested now. Show me." But it's too late, right?
right.
So
Well,
yeah.
a lot
So
of
anyway,
these,
that idea, that just accept where you are, and you're still in the position that you chose to be in, which is, creating possibilities for yourself, right?
yeah, I mean, I look at where I'm at on that tree and I say, I'm pretty far down the road and I've made a lot of bad choices myself. I've limited a lot of my choices, years of not eating right, years of not doing other things right, years of not working on my career in the right way. And change some of those decisions and I could start to accelerate by having some good ideas or determine which direction I'm going. Maybe I don't need to end up in that location by looking at different future me. Say, well, I don't need to be a pro golfer. That's not important to me, right? Or if it is, you can do it. I did have one of my clients I called up, and in 3 years he became a Olympian skeet shooter. He had never shot a gun before 3 years prior. And I said, how do you do that? He says, I go on every Friday and I shoot 1,000 rounds. And he
Yeah,
was the
yeah.
CEO of a company, young guy. And I said, wow, that's something else. But you can choose what you want to do, what's important to you as
You can
part of
always
it. But
choose. That's the story of Bruno on the train. It's like, hey, you can change trains. I mean, you can change trains literally any time. So that's what I'm going to talk about in January. I got a talk coming up downtown here, and I'm gonna show that little video and see what happens.
well, part of it too is consciousness, knowing where you're at. That's
Well,
another
it's
issue.
waking up. It's like being conscious as opposed to being unconscious. Because, like, the guy says to him, "Can you remember being in the train station and you saw those signs?" And he says, "Yeah, well, I was half asleep. Well, that's the thing, right? You're half asleep, so you make a choice when you're not conscious, and it could be the wrong choice. But luckily, with mental time travel, you can go back and you can figure out that choice you made and go, "Oh, okay, well, I can switch now. I can assume another possibility here." So what's today? The 7th, right? So I guess we got a couple weeks before Christmas. Great to see you guys.
Yeah.
Same here.
Well, this is a great lesson. I was thinking of your tree thing. I'm thinking a 3D model of that. We're making decisions within other decisions. So,
Yeah.
your flat two-dimensional is here, smoke or not smoke. But then you could
Yeah.
say, eat or not eat. And, if it came, we're on a train that's going like this through the choices that we've made, and to wake up and see where we're at, and then try to make new choices and see if there's any bad habits that we have or any things we're doing
Well,
that
that's
are
something that we don't
limiting us.
we tend to not realize is we're already on the train. Like we don't have any choice. It seems like we're on the
Yeah.
train. We're on a train, and the train's going somewhere. And we can change. We can go to a different track. So I put this thing together, or at least it came together. I mean, it was like a message from Merlin. You've heard me talk about those, right? Kind of an intuitive thing. I was in the car one day and I thought, what if you fell asleep and you woke up and you're on a train and what would you do, right?
Hmm,
Well, I thought, what's this?
for sure.
So I put that together, and that's.
Well, I think our history is like that. We end up celebrating Christmas because that's what we woke up celebrating Christmas. Other people celebrate Hanukkah, right? Other people
Hmm.
celebrate. So it's kind of like waking up. You say, wait, I woke up. I didn't make these choices. I didn't decide to eat Italian food. I grew up in an Italian family. And so that's how you ended up eating Italian food, right? And so you say,
Hmm.
that's a
Oh,
choice.
that's
You
right.
can
Yeah,
eat
you didn't
Middle
you
Eastern
didn't decide to
cuisine.
be born into an Italian family. But now that you wake up and you realize, oh, I'm in this Italian family. Do I want
Right.
Italian food for Christmas? Yes or no? You can make a choice, right?
Well, it's a little confusing too. The problem is a little bit heady once you start saying all these choices that you have are choices you can decide to not choose too. Well,
Yeah.
then you're like,
Well,
do I
yeah,
want?
in some ways you can, but we're moving through time. That's the point, right? So if you realize, oh, I could have changed to a different train back there, and I could have been in that place, but I missed the opportunity. So now I have to see what's coming up in the future. I still have an opportunity to go into a similar place, kind of thing, right? So what I was thinking about that, and you mentioned this just a second ago, Greg, about we have a lot of different future selves. So which future self are you going to become? Which one are you going to connect with? And that was part of that video, or that audio that I sent you from Neville Goddard. He talked about you have to use your imagination to get into the situation in the future that you want to be in your mind. You see it, you feel it, you smell it, you taste it, everything. You get right in there. And if you do that, then as we know now, he didn't know it back when he wrote that thing, that now there's neuroplasticity that says, oh, your brain will change and you'll start to notice different things that you didn't notice before, different opportunities, right?
And that's another aspect of what you're talking about. So it's a tool or it's a part of how we process these choices that we're trying to learn to make with neuroplasticity. And say, if you always think of the way to say, don't do that a certain way, maybe you could rewire your brain to say, please do not do that.
Oh, of course.
That's not,
You can
and
you can rewire your brain anytime, or you can start anytime.
yeah, I
Hmm.
know a lot of
In
people,
fact,
and I was raised pretty rough, and I know a lot of people that never, people I really respect in business and in life that have been never mean. I've seen them never be unkind.
yeah.
And that's
Hmm.
kind of amazed me to see
Hmm.
that because I dealt with a lot of it. I grew up in kind of a rougher area and a rougher era. And if my kids are, accused me of being a little rough, I'm like, well, you don't know what where I'm coming from, bud. I mean,
Hmm.
it wasn't, I didn't grow up in the ghetto, but I grew up in a scrappy area. And, there's a lot of people who are very astonished to see any type of, misbehavior. Um, it's probably more normal in the corporate world, in big cities at least.
Hmm.
It was kind of a side, but as I brought up many, but I enjoy talking about this. I guess that's why I'm here. And I feel like I'm learning. I mean, I feel like my ability to change my external world as well as to process my inner world and make better choices is changing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's all we can, I was going to say that's all we can hope for, but I guess we can hope for whatever we want. But,
Hmm.
we can do what we can do. We're still around. We still have choices. We still have possibilities we can create for ourselves.
I
Okay.
mean, I
Hmm.
Thank
love
you,
that
guys.
that video is awesome, Anthony. I mean, I would see the reason I brought up the AI part of it too is the idea of maybe expounding on that further and to show someone making different choices. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm saying, I'm trying to change my future now. I'm getting on a train. That was my example, is that, I'm trying to be on the train to a healthier life, to maybe longevity is not the most important criteria, but to have a healthy, older life and be able to be more vital and do different things differently. Certainly, it's one of the aspects of my life, but
Yeah. Well, I remember hearing something when I was a kid about early to bed and early to rise makes a person healthy, wealthy, and wise. And I remember thinking, that's a good thing. Healthy, wealthy, and wise to be that.
well, have you heard the one that proper planning prevents piss poor performance?
Haven't heard that one.
Yeah. So, this is about planning. In many ways, you're mentally thinking about something and deciding where you want to end up and what kind of life you want to have. And then you come back and try to come up with a plan to do
Well,
that.
part of the reason, just as an aside, I'm going to have to go in a minute, but part of the reason that I came up with this idea of this train was that I got a hold of some people in the prison system, and I was talking about doing a presentation for some people in the prison system, putting together a program for them, and the idea was that you can change tracks. That's why I call it life track, because those people, if they believe, well, I'm the way I am because my parents abused me or something and I can't change, and that's why I'm a criminal, and that's why I do drugs, there's nothing I can do about it. The message I want to give them is, yeah, you can change right now. You can change your attitude right now and put your life on a different track, So I'm glad you liked the video. Because I wasn't sure, I put it together and I thought, what are people going to think about this? Like this.
No, it was good.
Great.
A lot.
Okay,
You
thanks.
guys have a good week.
You too. Good, great.
All right.
Have a wonderful December.
You too. Thank you.
You too. Take
All
care.
righty. Bye. Nice to see you, Naomi.
Yes, ditto. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. We would love to have you join us in this online community for $1 a day. You get your own PDF copy of the book upon which this entire training series is based, along with 2 powerful meditation visualization recordings. You also get a free copy of this Design Your Life workbook and a 4-hour video course that tells you how to use it to change your life step by step. You get lifetime access to all of this on day 1, and you can cancel your registration at any time. Just go to learntodesignyourlife.com and click the link to join the online community.